Okay, this may be the final recording. So what I'd like to do is go back to the last chapter that we recorded and point out two important pieces. They are here. Right. Okay. First, Pinchas ben Elazar HaKohen. So there was a priest who worked in the temple, whatever temple they had, and his name was Pinchas, the son of Elazar the Kohen. He is an important man who came with the delegation of the Israelites to Reuven, Gad, and half of Manasseh. Okay, so he comes with them, and he is the one that kind of establishes peace in the land with everybody, and everybody is in agreement that they're only going to worship one God. And then the other piece I wanted to point out to you, that they finish and they proclaim Adonai HaElohim. God is God. In other words, Reuven, Gad, and half of Menashe. Okay, they have an altar, a mizbeach, and this is going to be the witness before us that we agreed that God is God, and we have no intention or had intention of challenging God. So that's our two closing remarks from the previous chapter. Now, quickly. Okay, now the conquest is over and it's peace. Their enemies are leaving them alone, and Yeshua is old. And he calls all the elders and all the heads of the tribes and all the judges and all the officers. And he says to them, I am old and I am getting on in my years. And you all saw how God came towards you, kept his word, protected you against your enemies. He fought for you, and I fell for you. In other words, I defeated for you all the enemies of Israel, all the tribes that lived here, and now we gave to you all the land, to your tribes, all the lands from Jordan, and I took out all the other nations that lived here, and God is going to push them away from you to leave you your land to inherit. You will take their land, you will inherit their land, just as God promised. And you will be strong. Please note that Yehoshua uses the same word, verse 6, that Moses used for him. He told him, Chazak ve'ematz. Now he's telling to them, Moses told Joshua, Chazak ve'ematz, and Joshua tells the people, Chazaktem, you will be strong to keep the Torah, everything that's written in the Torah. Don't you move from it right or left. Ding dong, right, left, Lot, Abraham. Okay? And anybody that's left behind from all those nations, those remaining, neither make mention of the name of their gods, nor swear them. In other words, don't make mention of any foreign gods who might still be surviving, or people who might be surviving. And you will cling on to God just like you did until now. Cling means like to glue yourself to God. You'll follow God's ways. And God will take all the nations away from you, no matter how big or small they might be. One person will chase away 1,000, because God is with you, and you will always be very careful to love God your God, because if you stray and you will cling on to the other gods who were left behind, and you will marry their sons and daughters, then you should know that this whole big deal that God did to conquer the land for you is all going to be for nothing, because it's all going to be reversed. So you will perish off this good land which God has given you. I go like everybody else goes, which means I'm dying, and you will know with all your heart that not a word that God promised you that he didn't fulfill. So God did everything that he promised you, and when all the goodness of the land will fall upon you, then God will do everything that he did. He will destroy all the people. Only the good land will survive for you. Now, if you go back on the promise that God gave you and you worship foreign gods, then you will be lost from the good land that God has given you. That's chapter 23. So if you will, this is Joshua's kind of will and farewell. He tells the people, if you go back on anything, God will go back, you will lose the land. If you will obey, you will get everything that God promised and already did for you. And Joshua gathers all the tribes of Israel to Shechem, and he calls the elders and the heads and their judges and their officers. Everybody is called. And Yeshua says to them, your fathers dwelt all time beyond the river. Terach, Abraham is going back to Abraham's youth, where he's coming from. Abraham's father is Terach. And here, Terach, the father of Abraham, and the father of Nahor. Nahor is Abraham's brother. And they served other gods, but they came into this land, and when they crossed the river, they followed the ways of God, and God multiplied their seed and gave them Isaac. And I gave to Isaac Jacob and Esau, and I gave to Esau the land of Seir, Edom, where he lived, and Jacob and his children went into Egypt, and I sent Moses and Aaron and put plagues upon Egypt, and I brought them out of Egypt, the end of 5. Moving down to 6. And I brought your fathers out of Egypt, and you came onto the sea, and the Egyptians ran after you, and their chariots and horsemen all drowned in the sea. He's reminding them of the Exodus. He's reminding them that God was good to you, and therefore you have to be God to good. You have to be good to God. And they screamed, cried out to God, and he put darkness between them and the Egyptians, and he brought them out. He crossed the sea, and they lived in the wilderness, in the desert of the Sinai. And when he came out, he crossed the land of the Amorites that dwelt beyond, and I gave everything to them and destroyed all the other nations. He reminds them of the story of Balak and the son of Zippor, king of Moab. I'm going on. And Balaam, who came to curse the Jewish people, and instead of cursing them, he blessed them with the words, Matovu ohalecha Yaakov, how good are your tents, Jacob, and you crossed the Jordan River, and you came to Jericho, and you fought in Jericho, and you defeated the Amori, Prizi, Knaani, Chiti, Girgashi, Chivi, Yevusi, the 7 nations who lived there, and all of them fell before you. They were defeated in front of you. And verse 12, and I sent the hornets before you, which drove them out from before you, and the 2 kings of the Amorites. Who defeated the people there? They were the hornets. Okay, Hatzirah in Hebrew, the hornets, and they defeated the kings of all these people. Now, therefore, fear the Lord, serve him in sincerity and truth. Put away the gods which your fathers served beyond the river. God is very concerned. Joshua is very concerned that as they enter Eretz Israel, they're going to start worshiping the gods of the land that were there, not God that they distant, that they don't see. So he keeps warning them. Now, therefore, fear the Lord, serve him in sincerity, and if it seems evil to you to serve God, choose this day whom you will serve, whether the gods which your fathers served, or the other gods? And the people answered and said, God forbid that we should leave our God to worship other gods, because God is the one who took us out from Egypt and our fathers out from slavery, from out of Egypt, and all the miracles that he did for us. And he kicked out all the foreign tribes from Eretz Israel so that we should get Eretz Israel for us, and we will worship God. Ki hu Eloheinu. Na'avod et Adonai, hu Eloheinu. And Yeshua says to the people, Lo tuchlu la'avod et Adonai, you cannot serve Lord, for he is holy. He is a jealous God. He will not forgive you transgressions. If you mess up, God will not forgive you. Verse 20, if you leave God and you worship foreign gods, then know that bad things will happen to you. And they say again, no, we will worship God. You are witnesses against yourselves, says to them Joshua. You just testified that you are going to worship God. And now take all the foreign gods, anything that you might be inclined to follow, get rid of them from amongst you. And they keep saying, we will worship God, and it's his voice that we're going to listen. Yehoshua makes a covenant with the people, and that was an ordinance, like a covenant, in Shechem. Where did God make a promise with the people? In the city of Shechem. And Joshua wrote these words into a book of the law of God, and he took great stones and set them up like a monument that we should remember them. We're in verse 27, and we're almost there. So this is going to be a witness that will be against us if anybody disobeys God. And he tells, Joshua sends all the people back to their own areas from Shechem, and Joshua dies, and he is 110 years old. He is the servant of God. Until now, he was the servant of Moshe. He's now the servant of God, and they bury him in Timnat Serach in the area of Ephraim. Timnat Serach, you must remember that name. It's almost certain it's going to appear as one of the questions. God and Israel worships God all the days of Joshua, and all the judges and the elders, and they took with them the bones of Joseph that they brought out of Egypt, and they buried him in Shechem. Where? In the place where Jacob bought from Hamor for 100 ksita. You remember that from Genesis. Elazar, the son of Aaron, also died, and they buried him in the mount of Pinchas, his son, that was given to him in the mountain of Ephraim. This finishes the material for sects 7 and 8.